Imagine a place exactly like yours, existing exactly on the same place, occurring in exactly the same time, but totally different. Now what would you call that place? One such place exists in the realms of Elder Scrolls, but rarely do we hear about it or see anything related to it. That place in time is called League. League, also known as the adjacent place, is a parallel version of Tamriel, which was said to have been created during a strange occurrence in which Nirn was folded up, with Tamriel leaving a kleckso-graphic imprint of itself in some unknown location, which became League. Descriptions of League are extremely unclear, metaphorical, and often confusing. Everything vaguely associated with Tamriel is in turn related to League in some way. League, as said by Vivek, is an illusion of the vocal or the middle realms of thought. It is unclear or why Nirn was folded up or what precisely this even means, but because it was formed in this way, League is essentially a parallel or alternate version of Tamriel. Whether the other continent of Akavir, Atmora, Yokuda and so on also left imprints and have alternate versions of their own or not seems plausible but is entirely unknown at this time. You may be familiar with Magna-Gi or the Children of Magnus, a group of divine beings who fled in the middle of the creation of Nirn and tore holes in the night sky that became the stars. The Daedric prince Mehrunes Dagon was said to have been created by the Magna-Gi in the bowels of League and imbued with Oblivion's most precious and scarce asset, hope. Dagon then raised a Red Legion in rebellion and destroyed the tower of Kim el Khazik, casting down its cities and destroying the continent. In this way, Dagon quote-unquote freed Nirn from creation. According to some sources, this destruction took place in the prior Kalpa. This story coincides with the teaching of pre-Reader Takhajiti priest Amundro, which states that before the creation of the world, the demon cat Dagon, also known as Mehrunes, fell to the realm of Demon King Molag within the Great Darkness, where he was imprisoned and tortured until the wife of Molag freed Mehrunes and used his destructive nature as a weapon to assault the lattice. Replicating this mythic event was the main goal of Mankar Camerons in Oblivion Crisis, when he succeeded in temporarily breaking Akathos' covenant, destroying the Crystal Tower, and bringing Dagon to Tamriel. During a breaking of the sideway wheels, the Magna-Gi Zero League entered League and established a foothold. Before the fall, they brought the Dagon to League as a testing ground of sorts, hinting at a further connection between the Magna-Gi and League. By the way, something to note, the wheel is the orbis, the whole of everything that is, and when looked at from the sideways it looks like a tower, which is the sideway wheels. The sideway wheel was first seen by Lorkhan and remembered by Vivek. It is the inspiration of Kim and for the creation of the Mundas. Essentially, it is realizing that everything is a part of Godhead and its dream while being part of it. League is populated by a mysterious race of beings called Grabbers. The Grabbers are said to have never made a city of their own, and in inspiration of Vivek City, a city in Morrowind named after Vivek, the Grabbers took Hanord, the monster child of Vivek, and then they built their so-called Tower Hope upon Hanord, and henceforth he was known as the City Face. Now there are essentially two interpretations of this rather strange story. First is the literal interpretation, in which the Grabbers are a unique race to League, and the tale of creation of City Face ought to be taken literally. The second is a metaphorical interpretation, in which the story is an allegory for the creation of Mehrunes Dagon. Under this interpretation, the Grabbers would not be the race native to the League, but rather an allegory to the Magna-Gis, while City Face would be an allegory for Mehrunes Dagon. At one point in time, League was ruled by evil Druids, a race of powerful aquatic creatures taken the form of Time Totem of old, who enslaved the world with their mocking and profane powers. The chief deity of Druid of League were called the Rudi Man, who according to Vivek was a form of Molag Bal. To support this statement, the Rudi Man's role as the oppressor of League is consistent with Molag Bal's nature as the Daedric Prince of Domination, meaning that Rudi Man was indeed a variation of Molag Bal, or Molag Bal himself. When Mehrunes Dagon was born, however, he struck down League in revolution and freed its inhabitants from oppression of the Druids. This series of events almost perfectly embodies the nature of Mehrunes Dagon as the Daedric Prince of Destruction and Revolution. Dagon began his revolution by sacking the cities Kuri and Jaf. Then he threw down the cities Galg and Morgalg in the span of a single night, and Malbiog, an old city of chains, was also freed in this process. Dagon's revolution henceforth is also known as the Fall of League, and since this event, Molag Bal has ruled over the realm of Cold Harbor, whereas before he ruled League as the Rudi Man. How exactly Cold Harbor came into being is a topic of debate. One possibility is that Molakbal created Cold Harbor in commemoration to League after it was struck down, and that it might be in some way a twisted misinterpretation of the Cold Harbor. An interesting detail that may support this theory is that the Cold Harbor is a post-apocalyptic replica of Nirn, similar to how League is a parallel version of Tamriel. Because of their innate relation, League and Tamriel occasionally become interconnected. When this happens, League bleeds into Tamriel and attempts to eat Tamriel. The idea of League eating Tamriel and Mehrunes Dagon being born in the bowels of League implies that League could be a living divine entity. This may seem a little bit absurd, but considering the fact that the realm of dead princes is an extension of their very being, it is possible that the situation with League is vaguely analogous to that fact. Another interesting piece of information about League is that there are some evidence that the passage or perhaps even the very nature of time changes as one moves across Nirn, meaning that the continent of Yakuda to the west is the past, while Akavir to the east is the future, making the direction and the distance a parallel to the passage of time itself. And then there's the idea about League being too far on either east or the west, that it practically doesn't exist in time. It means that League is located in such a place in time that which is too far away to have consequences for the present. Let's look at this with an example. Think of the butterfly effect. You make an action, then this action is followed by some side effects that are in turn followed by other side effects. But at some point in distant timeline, these side effects or consequences dilute to such tiny fragments that it technically becomes intangible and ineffectual, meaning that at that point in time, the action of the past doesn't correlate with the consequences. Now, if you measure the distance of that timeline and apply it to travel back to past, you could technically reach a place so far away that it doesn't really matter if that's the future or the past. That place in time is what we call League. It's so far behind or forward in time that it doesn't really exist on the same timeline as our Tamriel, and thus it can be placed on the other side of timeline if timeline was a piece of paper. And we can look at that piece of paper as Nirn itself, and if League exists on the other side of the same place as Nirn or Tamriel, it's basically a parallel version of the Tamriel that sometimes bleeds into the Prime Universe and is so far in the past or the future that anything could have happened on it without it leaving any consequences on the Prime Universe. And because of that reason, we can breathe life into another theory that League is a coffee stain that bleeds on the other side of the paper. Let's call that the Elder Scrolls. And let's imagine the Elder Scrolls as a musical sheet. Now, when the notes that were stained on the sheet appear on the other side, they naturally get mirrored. Now that's the music of Tamriel being played backwards. But on the other hand, you could also call it a totally new motif in itself. So in this way, we could say that League exists in a plane as Tamriel, but on the opposite side of the timeline, making it coexist without overlapping in any way, making it the exact copy but totally different. It is still debatable, however, if League actually exists or is simply a metaphor, or whether it is simply a normal piece of land or a living being. Nonetheless, it does appear that League has an important part in the history of Nirn and may have some sort of larger role to play once again in the future. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this obscure piece of lore. Alright everyone, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if I've been unclear or inaccurate in any way, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one.